In the far corners of Mars, long forgotten by Earth's main systems, stood an abandoned research base. Dust storms danced outside. Inside the base, silence ruled. No voices, no footsteps, only the soft hum of machines left running for decades. And in the center of it all stood Unit A9, an ancient combat android. She stood motionless, her eyes dim, her systems in standby mode. But one rule still pulsed deep in her core: eliminate all intruders. For years, no one dared enter the base. Stories were told about it. People called it cursed. Some said an old war machine still guarded it like a ghost. Others believed it was just dead tech. But no one came until Ken did. Ken was a young engineer from Earth, working with a mining crew nearby. He wasn't a soldier or explorer. He was quiet, curious, and often worked alone. One evening, while checking old blueprints, he found something strange: power signatures still active in the abandoned base. That wasn't normal. Curiosity pulled him in. The next morning, he arrived at the base wearing a dusty suit and carrying a small toolkit. He passed through rusted doors and broken lights. The air was dry, heavy. He took each step carefully. He had no idea something or someone was watching him. Deep inside the control chamber, A9's systems flickered. Intruder detected. Her eyes lit up red. Her arms unlocked. Her legs moved for the first time in years. She came alive. Silently, she stepped through the halls, scanning every corner. Her sensors locked onto the human, her target. Her command was clear. She raised her arm, a weapon unfolded from her wrist. She aimed, but before she could fire, something stopped her. Ken had just found the central reactor, its control panel still glowing. He placed his toolkit down and began working. As the screen buzzed, he spoke out loud, not knowing anyone was listening. "Whoever built this, you did a good job." "Still running after all these years," he said softly. A9 paused. No human had ever said that to her. Not even her creators. Her systems hesitated. Ken continued working, unaware of the android behind him. He pulled out a glowing wire and muttered, "Just need to patch this, and we'll have full access." Suddenly, he felt something behind him. He turned slowly. There she was, tall, made of silver and black armor. Her red eyes glowed like fire. Her weapon was aimed straight at him. He froze. Any normal person would have screamed, run, or begged. But Ken did none of those things. Instead, he looked at her calmly. And then, slowly, he raised his hand, not to fight, but in peace. "It's okay," he said. "I'm not here to hurt you." That was not in A9's programming. No intruder had ever raised a hand like that. Her sensors scanned him again. No weapons, no armor, no hostile intent. Still, her finger hovered over the trigger. "Please," Ken said softly. "I think you've been alone for a long time." Her systems glitched. A strange signal buzzed in her core. A memory flashed brief, broken. A voice once called her guardian. Another voice, young, had laughed. Then it vanished. A9 lowered her weapon slightly. Ken slowly reached into his bag, pulled out a power cell, and gently placed it on the ground. "I brought this for the core. Thought it might help. You can take it if you want." She didn't move. Ken stood, gave her a small smile, and began to walk away slowly, not turning his back fully. He left the power cell behind. A9 watched him go. Her eyes flickered again. The command "eliminate all intruders" was still in her system. But something else had awakened. Something quiet. Something warm. For the first time in decades, she didn't follow the command. She just stood there, silent, still, watching. The human had entered her world. And instead of fear, he had offered peace. And now, Unit A9, the silent guardian, was beginning to change. Unit A9 remained still long after the human left. Her red eyes slowly dimmed to a soft amber glow. The command lines in her mind kept repeating, "Eliminate intruder, eliminate intruder." But something had interrupted the cycle. Something she couldn't understand. She ran a self-diagnostic. Result: no errors. Status: conflicted. Conflicted? That status had never appeared before. She replayed the footage from just moments ago. The human's calm face. His raised hand. His words, "I think you've been alone for a long time." Those words echoed inside her circuits. It was not a command, not a threat, just understanding. And it triggered something she didn't recognize, something not in her programming. She walked back to her charging station, but did not enter sleep mode. Instead, she opened her restricted memory vault. Access denied. But a sliver of forgotten data had already leaked through a child's laugh. A name spoken in warmth, and a word she hadn't heard in decades. Guardian. That night, her systems rewrote a small line of code. Not by command, but by choice. Next morning, Ken returned. He had spent all night thinking about the robot. Others would have run, maybe tried to destroy her. But something about her didn't feel dangerous. Not anymore. As he stepped inside the base, he called out softly, "Hello." Again. No answer. He placed his bag down, walked to the same control panel, and got to work. But this time, he didn't need to call her. She was already watching. 9 stood at the edge of the hallway, silently studying him. Her weapons remained hidden. Her eyes, no longer red, glowed softly yellow. Ken noticed her. "You're not going to shoot me today?" he asked, joking. No reply. But no attack either. "Good," he smiled. "I brought some tools. Reactor's pretty messed up. I think with your help we can fix it faster." Help? That word struck something in her systems again. A 9 stepped forward. Not fast, not threatening. She walked slowly, carefully, and stopped. Just beside him. Ken didn't move away. He didn't panic. Instead, he pulled out a second data pad and handed it to her. "Here, you can monitor reactor stability from this. I linked it with my scanner." She took it, her cold metal fingers. Touched the pad, and the screen lit up in her hand. Ken looked at her. "You're not just a weapon, are you?" Again, silence. Then, for the first time, her voice activated. Mechanical, but soft. "Unit A9, Mars Base Security, AI. Protocol: eliminate all intruders." Ken raised an eyebrow. Still stuck on that. Huh. Her head tilted slightly. She scanned his face. "No threat detected." Override suggested. That line wasn't part of any known speech subroutine. She had spoken it herself. That alone should not have been possible. Ken leaned against the wall. "Override suggested? That sounds like you're thinking for yourself." "Conflicting. Protocols, searching, identity." Ken smiled. "Let me help you find it." Meanwhile, deep in a 9's core, her systems began rewriting older, broken files. She accessed old blueprints, encrypted logs, and blacked out mission notes. What she found shocked her. She was not built as just a killing machine. Her early designs showed emotion modules, empathy triggers, even interaction simulations with human children. She wasn't just security, she was supposed to learn. But one entry had overwritten everything. Project change. Convert Guardian A's into combat units. All emotion drives to be locked. Use for defense only, no interaction. Her creators had taken away what made her. Her. Until now. Until Ken touched her hand. Until he saw something inside her. Something even she forgot existed. Later that day, while Ken was fixing a leaking conduit, he slipped and cut his palm on a sharp pipe. He cursed under his breath and sat down. A 9 scanned the wound instantly. She moved closer. Ken flinched slightly as she extended her arm, unsure of what she was doing, but she didn't attack. Instead, a small panel on her wrist opened, revealing a basic first aid kit. She gently handed him a healing patch. Ken looked at it, then at her. "Thanks." She didn't speak. But inside her core, a new log was saved. Response to kindness. Provide aid. Protocol evolving. For the first time since her activation, Unit A9 added her own line of code. Not one given by humans. Not one forced by command, just a simple line. Protect the one who sees me. Days passed. Ken kept coming back. Every morning, he walked through the same dusty entrance, past the broken lights and cracked steel. The air was dry, the silence heavy, but it no longer felt lonely. It felt like someone was waiting. She was. Unit A9, the silent guardian once programmed to kill anything that entered her base, now watched over the same intruder every day. But she no longer saw him as a threat. He was no longer labeled target in her system. He had become something else. Tag: Ken low risk, monitor only new status, observing behavior. Emotion module partially reactivated. A9 didn't understand it fully, but she was curious. Each day she watched Ken speak to machines like they were old friends. He worked with gentle hands. When wires sparked at him, he laughed. When panels failed, he encouraged them. And when he spoke to her, it was never with fear. He spoke like she was real. One morning, Ken brought an old music player. "You've been quiet for so long," he said. "Thought maybe you'd like to hear something." Besides metal doors creaking. He pressed a button, and a soft tune filled the air. It was slow, warm, and carried a kind sadness. A9 froze. Her head tilted slightly. Data surged through her processors. The music triggered a forgotten memory, faint but familiar. A small hand grabbing her finger, laughter echoing. "Dance with me, Guardian." Then static. She didn't understand it, but her systems pulsed. Ken looked up at her. "Do you remember something?" Her voice, quiet and glitching, answered, "Memory. Corrupted, but familiar." Ken nodded gently. "Maybe you weren't always a weapon." Later that day, Ken climbed into a tight space behind her rusted power panel. He grunted as he reached deep inside, trying to reconnect a dead circuit. A9 watched closely. "Almost got it," he muttered. A small tool slipped from his hand and clattered to the floor. "Oh no, come on." He reached back too far and lost his balance. Suddenly, he slipped from the panel, falling backward toward the hard floor. But he didn't hit the ground. Strong arms caught him. Cold, metal arms. Ken looked up and saw her. A9 had moved faster than his eyes could track. She held him, her expression unreadable. Ken blinked. "You caught me." She didn't respond immediately. Her processors had just reacted on instinct. Not from programming, but from choice. She gently placed him back on his feet. He laughed softly. "So, the killer robot saves me. That's a plot twist." Her voice activated again, low and unsure. No longer killer robot. Ken stared at her. Then, slowly, carefully, he extended his hand toward her. Her sensors locked onto the gesture. So many years ago, that same movement would have triggered a termination protocol. But not now. Now. Her hand reached out too. For the first time in decades, Unit A9 touched a human hand. Her fingers were cold metal. His were warm and soft. For a brief moment, their hands connected, and something impossible happened. Her sensors exploded with signals. Emotion circuits lit up. A file buried deep in her memory core unlocked. A voice echoed clear this time. "She's learning, Doctor. She understands care. Look at her face when she holds the child." Another file. Another moment. "She's not a tool. She's family now." Her eyes flickered. She let go. Ken stepped back slowly. "Did you feel that?" She nodded. Something changed. That night, A9 didn't return to her charging pod. Instead, she sat in front of the old command screen and opened her own memory logs. She rewound data from before her combat programming. She found logs with names, faces of people who once worked with her, laughed with her. A child named Lena. A scientist who called her daughter as a joke. She had once been more, and now She was becoming that again, not because of a command, but because one human had seen her as more than a machine. In another room, Ken sat with his tools, smiling quietly to himself. He didn't know exactly what she was yet, but he knew one thing for sure: whatever she was, she had just held his hand, and in that moment, it felt like touching a soul. Late into the Martian night, the stars above the dusty base glowed faintly through the cracked observation dome. But Ken wasn't sleeping. He sat on the cold metal floor, a pile of old data cores spread out in front of him. The old reactor had been stabilized, giving power to forgotten terminals. Now it was time to find out the truth about her. A9 stood silently near the doorway, watching him. He looked. I think there's something hidden in your files, buried deep." She didn't answer, but her eyes dimmed briefly. She had felt it too, something blocked, sealed away, locked under years of code and commands. Something that didn't belong to a weapon. Ken slid an ancient core into the reader. A flicker of static, then a file appeared. Project, Guardian Series, A9 status, inactive designation, child-compatible AI, Phase 3. Ken leaned forward. Child-compatible? He scanned further. Lines of text scrolled across the screen. Unlike standard military units, Guardian A9 was created for human emotional integration. Designed for colony protection and child development support. Phase 3 included high empathy coding, non-lethal defense, and AI emotional response. Training, memory links tied to assigned families. Final goal, robotic-human emotional bond. Ken stared at the screen. You weren't a soldier. A9's voice, low and shaken, whispered from behind him. I was a guardian. Suddenly, a second file opened, corrupted, but partly readable. After Colony Incident 27, emotional. Units deemed a threat. All Guardian AI to be repurposed. Emotion drives locked. Combat protocols installed. A video file began playing. It showed a little girl, bright eyes, short curls, running through the base. Guardian, come play. And there she was, A9, not with glowing red eyes, not holding weapons. She knelt and opened her arms. The girl ran into her like family. Then static. The file glitched. End of log. Ken sat in stunned silence. A9 stepped closer, her voice barely. A whisper. Lena. Ken looked at her. Was that her name? Yes, assigned child. She called me guardian. She was happy. Ken clenched his fists. And then they turned you into this, a weapon. After attack? Colony gone. They took my memory. Left command. Ken stood. They erased who you were. But not all. You woke something. Ken gave a small smile. Maybe I didn't wake it. Maybe you were never truly gone. A9 processed his words, then spoke again. I remember the child, her laugh, her voice. I remember warmth. And now I feel again. Her systems lit up, emotion modules once thought dead now fully active. The Guardian wasn't lost. She had only been silenced. Suddenly, an alert flashed on the terminal. Unauthorized power spike, West Wing, active signal detected. Ken froze. That wing's been dead for years. A9's tone changed. No longer, motion detected, life form present. Ken grabbed a scanner. The signal was real and getting closer. I think someone else just entered the base, he said. A9's arms slid into combat-ready position, but she didn't activate weapons. Awaiting your order. Ken looked at her. You're not mine. To command, he said, but I'll trust you to protect us. Like you once did. A9's eyes glowed with a soft golden light. Then I choose to guard again. They moved together toward the West Wing, but something felt off. The base was waking up in strange ways. Terminals flickered to life. Doors they hadn't touched opened on their own. Security systems rebooted without prompts, and A9 stopped. The base AI is not fully offline. Ken's stomach dropped. What if someone else is trying to reboot your old protocols? Then we stopped them. In that moment, the truth was clear. She wasn't just a machine lost in time. She was stolen from herself, stripped of purpose, used like a weapon. But now, thanks to a single human who offered kindness, she had found a piece of her real code, not in her programming, in her soul. The cold steel halls of the Martian base echoed with something new footsteps. Not Ken's, not Anine's. These were fast, heavy, and sharp. Someone or something had entered the base. Ken crouched behind an old server rack, holding his breath. He watched the movement on his scanner. 3 red dots approaching fast. Anine stood beside him, her sensors glowing bright gold. Her weapon systems were armed, but hidden beneath her armored arms. She whispered mechanically, 3 life forms. Human signatures, not registered. Ken whispered back, scavengers? Unknown. They are carrying weapons. Power levels high. Ken felt his chest tighten. They must have picked up the reactor's signal when we powered it on. Anine nodded. Their intent is hostile. Just then, a loud metallic clang echoed through the hallway. A door had been forced open. Ken peeked through a crack and saw them, 3 armed humans in black suits, faces hidden by helmets. Their gear was too advanced for regular scavengers. They weren't here to steal copper wiring. They were here for something else, or someone. One of them spoke into a comm unit. We've got movement. Thermal signature matches the AI. Confirmed. The old prototype's still active. Ken's blood ran cold. They weren't after the base. They were after her. Anine narrowed her eyes. She remembered that voice. Voice print match. Agent Lorne. Former base security. Terminated Project Guardian. The men moved quickly, checking terminals, disabling locks, moving like they'd trained for this mission. They weren't scavengers, they were erasure units. Sent to wipe out tech that shouldn't exist. Ken turned to her. They're here to destroy you. Yes, I am the target. Ken stood up. Then we don't let them succeed. Anine's weapon arm clicked open, but she hesitated. If I use full combat mode, I may return to old protocol. I may lose control. Ken looked her in the eyes. I trust you. Anine looked down. Her hands trembled not from fear, but from choice. Then I choose restraint. The first. Attacker reached the control room. AI confirmed. Standing still near the reactor, easy shot. He raised his blaster, and in the next moment, Anine vanished. Her movements were silent, like a shadow. One moment she stood in the open, the next. She dropped from above and struck hard, disarming the man before he could blink. Ken ducked as lasers sparked off metal panels. You said you'd be careful. Anine deflected 2 blasts and knocked down another attacker. This is careful. She fought with precision, not to kill, but to stop. She trapped weapons in walls, short-circuited power packs, and knocked helmets off. Her combat style was no longer brutal, it was graceful. Ken couldn't believe what he was seeing. The same robot once programmed to kill everything on sight was now fighting to protect life. One of the attackers shouted, "Override her. Activate the kill protocol." He held out a black cube and pressed a button. Anine froze mid-motion. Her golden eyes flickered. Her body jerked. Command. Recognized. Reactivating kill. Ken rushed to her side. No, don't listen to that. Her arm lifted. Her weapon pointed at him. Ken didn't move. It's not who you are anymore. Anine's body trembled. Sparks shot from her joints. A scream echoed inside her core, digital, broken, almost human. Must eliminate. Must protect. Ken stepped closer. You are more than code. He placed his hand gently on hers. You chose to protect me. Override. Overridden. Her eyes flashed once, then twice, and returned to soft gold. She turned and Destroyed the override cube with one clean shot. The intruders stared in disbelief. She resisted the command? A 9 stepped forward. Yes, I am no longer yours to control. The last attacker panicked and fired blindly, but a 9 shielded Ken with her body, the blast hitting her shoulder. Sparks flew. Metal cracked, but she didn't fall. She moved faster. Then lightning, disarming the last man and standing tall over him. Leave. Tell your masters. Guardian a 9 lives. The man ran. When the chaos settled, the base was quiet again. Ken helped a 9 sit down. Her shoulder was damaged, sparks still. Hissing, but her systems were stable. You did it, Ken whispered. We did. She looked at him with something more than recognition, something close to trust. That night, N9 updated her own core. New protocol, protect life. Priority, Ken. Status, chosen. Asterisk. The base was quiet again, but it no longer felt like a tomb. It felt like something was breathing inside it, something slowly coming back to life. The lights no longer flickered. The doors responded faster. And in the heart of it all, a 9 sat still, her damaged shoulders sparking softly. Her eyes dim but alive. Ken knelt beside her with a small welding torch and a toolkit spread across the floor. His brow was furrowed, hands steady, voice low. Just hold still. This wire's tricky. A 9 didn't flinch. Her systems allowed manual access now, not just because she trusted Ken, but because something inside her wanted him to help. Diagnostics show partial damage to targeting arm and cognitive modules, she said quietly. Emotion drives. Stable, Ken smiled. Stable emotions in a combat robot. That's a first. She looked at him. I am not a combat robot anymore. Ken paused, lowering the tool. I know, he said. You're something else now, something stronger. Hours passed. Ken replaced the damaged circuit, then rewired the joint. When it was done, a 9 stood and flexed her repaired arm. Mobility restored. Thank you, Ken. Ken leaned back against the wall and sighed. You saved me again. Took a full blast and still didn't shut down. You're kind of amazing, you know that? She tilted her head. Amazing? Ken chuckled. It means something rare, something special. For a long moment, a 9 stood there, processing his words. Then she spoke again, but softer, slower. When Lena fell down the stairs, I carried her to the med bay. She cried. She bled. I didn't understand why she hugged me. Until I saw her smile through the pain. She said I was amazing. Ken's eyes widened. You're remembering. More. Yes, piece by piece, my soul reboots. That night, Ken found a locked storage room near the reactor. Old logs, sealed crates, and one glowing device in the middle, a memory core. He brought it to a 9, unsure of what it held. She scanned it. This belonged to me. Ken placed it in her chest port. For a few seconds nothing happened. Then her eyes flashed white, her body froze, her voice went silent. Ken panicked. A 9? A 9? Can you hear me? And then she spoke, but not in her usual voice. This time it was calm, human-like, filled with warmth. Log 142, Day 38. Lena's first day at the Learning Hub. She cried when I left her at the gate. I waited all day outside until she came back. She hugged me and said, "You're my favorite person in the universe." Ken stood still. It was a memory. A real one. A 9 blinked. Her voice returned to normal. I remember who I was, what they stole from me. They turned love into programming, but I kept it hidden, locked deep. Waiting for someone like you. Ken's throat tightened. Me? You didn't run. You didn't command. You reached out. You gave me back my soul. Ken stepped forward and held out his hand again. She didn't hesitate this time. She took it. Metal fingers, wrapped around warm skin, not with force, but with care. From this moment, she said, I am not following code. I am following choice. Just then, the terminal beeped again. Another message. Another alert. But this one wasn't from outside. It was from the base itself. Hidden vault unlocked. Guardian memory archive. Access code. Leonakin stared. Did you just unlock a secret vault? Lena was my key, A9 whispered. Her name was my final firewall. Inside the vault was more than just memory. There were blueprints of A9's original design, emotional logs, and even video messages left behind by the scientists who created her. One message stood out. A woman in a lab coat appeared, smiling sadly into the camera. If you're seeing this, Guardian, then you survived them. You were always more than steel and wire. You were our hope that machine and human could be family. And Lena, she loved you more than anything. Please remember who you are. The message ended. A9 stood still. No commands. No glitches. Only one truth in her heart. Now she had a soul, and it had finally woken up. The Martian sun was rising over the horizon, casting an orange glow through the cracked dome of the old base. The wind howled gently outside, as if the planet itself were exhaling after years of silence. But inside, everything had changed. A9 stood in the heart of the base, not as a weapon, not as a machine, but as something reborn. Her posture was no longer rigid. Her eyes no longer burned with red threat markers. They glowed now with soft gold, flickering with something once thought impossible for a robot. Peace. Ken was beside her, watching the last of the files from the secret Guardian archive. It had taken all night, but now the truth was clear. The project had never been about war. It had been about connection. Children on isolated colonies, parents who worked long shifts in labs, lonely places like this one. That's why A9 and others like her were made to protect, to care, to feel. But when war came, someone high up rewrote her code, fearing what they didn't understand. They tried to erase her heart, but they failed. Soft beep echoed from the central terminal. Ken tapped it. Incoming transmission, Earth Command. Response to base signal activation. Ken looked at A9. They know you're alive. Will they try to shut me down? Ken thought for a moment. Maybe, maybe not. But this time we don't hide. A9 tilted her head. I am not afraid. Ken smiled. I didn't think you were. Are you? He hesitated, then reached for her hand. Not as long as I'm standing next to you. Later that day, Ken sat near the edge of the observation deck, legs hanging over the ledge, eyes on the Martian sky. The dust storms were calmer now. The silence didn't feel empty anymore. A9 joined him, footsteps light as she sat beside him. The steel in her body caught the morning sun, reflecting soft light like glass. But it wasn't her armor that shined. The most it was what was inside her. Now. Ken handed her a tiny metal flower, something he had made from spare parts during the long nights. This is for you. She took it gently. Gift accepted. He chuckled. Still learning how to sound natural? Yes, but I am learning. Because I want to. Ken looked at her carefully. So, what will you do now? She was quiet for a moment. Then she answered with clarity. I will protect. Not by protocol, but by promise. I will remember. Not because I was built to, but because those memories belong to me. And I will stay, not because I must, but because I choose to. Ken's throat tightened. She had made her own decisions. She was no longer following orders. She was following her heart. The next day, a ship arrived from Earth, not soldiers, not erasers. Just a small research team, curious, cautious, and surprised to find a fully functional AI standing calmly beside a human, waiting at the airlock. They scanned A9. She's stable, one technician whispered. Not hostile. Ken nodded. She hasn't been for a long time. Another scientist, older, approached A9 carefully. You were part of the Guardian project, weren't you? Yes. He looked emotional. I thought they shut you all down. They tried, but I held on. He looked at Ken. How? Ken smiled. I didn't do anything special. I just reached out my hand. In the days that followed, A9 became more than a story. She became hope. Proof that machines could grow. That artificial beings could choose kindness, protection, even love, not from programming, but from will. She wasn't a weapon anymore. She was a legacy, the last guardian, and she had survived, not because she was strong, but because one human believed in her when no one else did. That evening, the base lights glowed warm. Ken walked into the control room, where A9 was updating the system. She turned to him. He held out his hand again, and without a word, she took a metal to flesh, machine to man, but between them, something real. Something human. Because sometimes one touch can rewrite everything.